3.
Hello, I'm Jacqui Marson and welcome to this week's edition of Love Decoded, brought to you by eharmony, the site that takes finding love seriously. If you're fascinated by the science of love, decoding the mysteries of attraction and unravelling our ideas of romance, then this is the show for you. This week we'll be discussing commitment-phobia, a massive and meaty topic, important to most of us, and how to know when you're ready for a relationship. We will be answering your questions throughout the show, so please do join in the conversation in the comments section now. Tell us your stories, ask us your questions, whatever you want from us today. So I'm pleased to be joined by author, journalist and relationship expert Helen Croydon.
Hello, thanks for having me.
Lovely to see you. Helen is a self-confessed former commitment phobe who's written books about that, and she specialises in relationships. So welcome to the show,
Hi.
Helen.
Yeah, great topic, commitment-phobia, one of my favourites.
Is it really? Yeah.
It is.
I mean, you have been very honest in your writings, I think. So just tell me briefly, what's your story? We will love somebody else's story in terms of commitment phobia.
Yeah, so as a writer, you tend to have a tendency to write about whatever journey you're going on. So for me, that translated as writing about my my younger, wilder dating. I think when I was trying to figure everything out, when I was new to dating, and I ended up writing about it because I always felt that I didn't want a relationship in the same way that all my peers did. So I'm talking about 10 years now, and I was in my late 20s, early 30s, and I ended up writing about this a lot. Because I find it fascinating to me. And I think the reason I was so commitment phobic, and I think this applies to lots of people, is simply because I didn't feel I'd lived life enough. I wasn't really, you do use that cliche, ready to settle down, but take that a layer deeper. It's more that, you know, if you don't actually know the type of lifestyle that you really want yet, or the sort of person that you are and the things in life that you really, really enjoy doing, I think that really is hard to share it with someone. And now I look back with a lot more, rational eyes. I think until you're not going to be open to sharing your life if your life is constantly changing at the time. So I'd always been in relationships before, so before I started exploring the issue and writing about it, before I kind of identified with the I am a commitment phobe sort of label. I'd been in relationships where I'd felt really restricted. You know, if, say, for example, a small example, on a Friday night, I might have wanted to go out with my work colleagues, because that's what you do when you're in your 20s. And I was in a relationship and he wanted to always do something together on a Friday. So instantly there's that resentment. And that's just a manifestation. And I'd always felt that being in a relationship had stopped me taking on new hobbies, meeting more new and interesting people. So when I split up from that relationship, I was like, I absolutely do not want to be in another relationship. I was just thriving on the freedom. And that's when I was like, so I identified as I am a commitment phobe because I don't want a relationship. But actually, I think that it's just commitment phobia has this awful label, doesn't it?
Yes,
actually, I think that's just kind of a natural thing that when we're discovering ourselves, that's what we do. We don't want to be tied down.
I wanted to bring that up because I think it is an awful label, really. It makes people feel bad about themselves, and it's an easy one to point the finger at others, especially maybe women pointing at men, and we can talk about that a bit later. I'm sure loads of people will have questions about that, like, am I dating a commitment phobe? How do I know?
Yeah.
But I was thinking about it in terms of clarity and your story. I think there is a huge difference between people who are almost like maybe have a clinical tendency to be very frightened of being committed and feeling trapped and feeling tied down, which is a little bit of what you alluded to, versus people who are just in a different life stage, who just want to kind of have fun, explore, play the field, meet lots of people, not ready. And again, something you've said in one of your writings, I think when it works is when you are both in the same stage, isn't it? The same life stage. So I almost think it's a bit of an unhelpful label to be saying people are, oh, they're scared of commitment, because it's maybe like we could turn that into a positive relationship,
Yeah.
they want to explore and meet as many people as possible.
And
And that's what sounds what happened to you.
And I always said, I want to meet, when I emerged from this commitment-phobic stage and wanted to meet someone, I then decided I want to meet someone who's been through what I've been through and has played around and has been a little bit commitment-phobic and now is ready like I am. Because I think unless you've gone through that, you've got to want a relationship, and I wanted to meet someone who wanted one, just like I had. Because then at least they're not going to be thinking, oh, the grass is always greener.
Yes.
They're not going to be missing the fact that they might not have had chance to live out their single years. But I think we've got to stop thinking of commitment phobia as being this bad thing. Oh my gosh, they can't commit, they're just playing around.
Yes.
But actually think of it as quite a natural phase. And not for everyone, of course. Some people just know what they want. Some people really enjoy companionship all the time, but they're not good on their own, and that's fine. We're all different. But for a lot of people, it is scary getting into a relationship, and you do give things up. Let's not deny that. So I'm in a relationship now, and I'm really happy with it. But I have given things up from my single life.
But you need
see
maturity.
Less.
Or to get to that point, maybe not maturity, that sounds a bit judgmental, but it is something, everything about relationships for the human being is this balance between we want our freedom and our independence, but we also want security and comfort.
Yeah.
And almost like you can just look at that pull between those two.
Yeah.
And I think maybe when you're younger or in a different phase, the pull of independence and freedom and individuality is probably greater than the need for security and comfort and safety.
Yeah.
And that goes on throughout the relationship, as you're saying now. Even when you're in a settled relationship, you still feel that, don't you?
You still feel there's things that you give up, but I suppose the idea is hopefully, you're going to meet someone you actually want to spend time with them more than you did doing all the other things that you used to do. And that's the key as well. I think when I was in that, wow, life's so brilliant, I want to explore it, or going through life like a kid in a sweet shop, all wide-eyed, then you do feel like a relationship is holding you back. But I think once you start to get into a rhythm of life, I think for me it was when my career settled down, when I just settled down, then that's when you start to think, okay, I don't mind giving up those things, because actually the person I'm with, I kind of prefer to spend time with them than doing all these new and experimental things that life has to offer.
Yeah. I have to ask you, two things really. There's been some eHarmony research recently, and interestingly, 25% of their respondents self-identified as commitment phobe. So that's quite interesting. We could talk a bit more about that with my theory about whether you really have got a serious problem, which probably would need a therapist to help with if it's something from your past that has really scarred you, and you actually, phobia means terror, it's fear, so that you might have an actual terror of closeness, often goes with them feeling trapped and that you can't get out of it, versus these 25% who self-identified. I'm wondering how many of them are more like what you're describing, of kind of, you said playing the field, didn't you?
Discovering yourself.
I
think discovering yourself. But interestingly, I found when I was researching this topic for one of my books, and I was interviewing lots of people, lifelong bachelors and things, I identified two types of commitment phobics. I hate that term, but let's go with it.
It's our working title. Yeah.
So the first was sort of the type that I was, which was just simply hasn't discovered themselves yet. Wants to live life, wants to experiment a little bit.
Life stage.
Yes. And the second ones were the ones who have been hurt and are shutting themselves off. And what they said to me, I was really trying to get to the nitty-gritty. What is it you're actually scared of? And they said it's not the relationship per se. It's not the being with people, because very often they love the dating side. It's the pain of the extrication of it's the fact that they think, say if they have been through a painful divorce, that they might have to go through that again. So they're not actually scared of a relationship. They're scared of the extraction of coming out of that relationship. That tends to be people that have gone through, funnily enough, I'm now dating someone who is in that bracket, and I remember him saying, it's you give so much to something. It's that, coming out of that's the painful bit.
Yes, and it's feeling the stakes are raised really high,
absolutely.
Isn't it? For the person
so that tends to be older. People, I think.
Yes.
And but it can manifest itself in the same way, because I think people in those circumstances will still then go through the crazy dating phase, then maybe the uncommittal, okay, let's explore my freedom again phase, but they're coming, I think the cause of their so-called commitment phobia it's very different.
Yes. Well, let's go to that then, because that's great that you've identified your partner, the person you are now in a secure, stable, long-term, well, I hope so, for you, relationship with. Is that correct?
Yeah.
You're saying would he have self-identified as a commitment phobe?
Yeah, oh my God, he still does.
Okay.
This was a joke between us that we actually said, we don't think we would have got together if we weren't both self-confessed commitment phobes, because he's, I was always scared of like giving up my freedom, because I think I'd always been in relationships that I felt had stopped me doing things. So I was almost very like, hey, I don't really want to meet someone more than twice a week kind of thing. And he was also in a phase of gone through a divorce and was in a different type of commitment. He was the one who was scared of being hurt, I think. And he'd gone on the dating scene and met loads of women who were sort of trying to pin him down. Where's this going? And so he was scared of that. So I think the fact that we both kind of entered it as we were both very cautious and very slow actually made it work.
I can see that, yeah.
So we joke about that now, that actually if we weren't both commitment phobic, slightly, we wouldn't have actually got together.
Did you talk about that? Was that the topic right from the beginning?
Oh, totally. And now it's almost a joke now that we still say we're both commitment phobes, and it's a bit of a joke, but we say, so say if we leave things at each other's houses, we say, we're not leaving it here, we've just forgotten it.
You still live in, you've got separate properties.
Oh yeah. No,
probably makes it work, isn't it?
Yeah, because even though we're committed emotionally, we don't want that kind of whole moving in together, because I don't think every relationship has to lead to that. What we have, we're both happy with, but we both joke, that we're not going to give each other keys. We're not going to leave each other. I mean, of course, it is a joke, but that's quite interesting. And I think that's okay to talk about relationships.
I think it's more than okay. I think that's really, really healthy. I think that's a good tip. I'm just going to kind of throw out for more questions. Please join in with this conversation. I know that this is a massive topic for so many people out there. And so please write your comments and write your questions in the comments section, or tell us your stories about how you were once a commitment phobic, now you've reformed like Helen, like how relationships have changed from you. So I'm sure a lot of people out there will be thinking, how do I know whether I'm dating a commitment phobic? I mean, this happened so much in my psychology practice, that women were kind of like, he hasn't replied to my text, he hasn't done this, he's a real fear of that old saying, really, how much is he into me? Does he really like me? That kind of, almost like a terror of being humiliated, of being rejected, of being abandoned. And it's a very difficult one. I used to say, like, sharpen your Sherlock. Like really look for the evidence, and especially the evidence of when you're with that person. Does he seem kind of open to you and connected? Or is he a bit avoidant? Or she, sorry, I'm being a bit gendered, in the moment, and then look at their behaviour. Do they keep cancelling dates, and they won't commit to things in the future? That's quite a big sign. What would be your top kind of two or three things?
I think, so firstly, is if you're feeling it, if you're not feeling loved and wanted, there probably is some sort of barrier there. Do you know what I mean?
Well,
There's never smoke without fire.
Real.
Yeah, I think you've got to trust your gut instinct in
Absolutely.
that. And if you feel, I mean, let's face it, if you're feeling loved, you're feeling, look, you have no insecurities. I mean, that's not always the case, of course, but I think you've got to, if someone is not making dates in the future, or it's not so much that though, is it? Because I was with the guy I'm with now, he was wouldn't make a date for the future, but at the same time, but I could still feel that there was I still felt that he respected me and wanted to be with me. So actually, I think you've got to then take all other variables into account, such as what's their lifestyle, are they busy? So for instance, when I met the guy I'm with now, he has 3 children and lives out of London and a big house to look after, so he's got lots of responsibility, so I couldn't ever expect him to be kind of, texting
at
3 times a day. You take that into account. So of course, so often there was a massive delay in replying to a text, and often he couldn't he couldn't see me for weekends, actually, for ages, because I didn't meet his children for ages. So but that doesn't necessarily mean that there was reason to be insecure, because it was because when I was with him, I felt wanted. So I think you've got to look at that. You're not got to just look at it from your own introverted, kind of, oh my gosh, she hasn't replied to a text.
Yeah.
And don't judge it from standards of your past relationships where you might have been with someone who had a lot more time.
Very good point.
I think you've got to look at the bigger picture, but ultimately it comes down to how do they make you feel.
Yeah, but also again, communication. That's what I would say to a client. Don't be afraid to ask them. I had a client whose the boyfriend had these commitments, like, a former marriage and children. And I said, look him in the eye and say, are you unavailable at weekends? Why are you unavailable at weekends? And really use all your judgment of how he's answering that. And if you're satisfied with that answer and, like you say, feel loved and reassured, then chances are he's not lying to you and he's not dating 100 people and, playing a double game, which is sort of the fear, isn't it?
Yeah.
I'm going to take our first question, first audience question. Jenny asks, what's the best way to tell if someone you're dating is ready for a relationship? That's the kind of flip side of the commitment-phobe, isn't it? We feel we've got people who don't want to commit, like we said, either through the life stage they're in or maybe because of deeper trauma and scarring from the past. And then this when is someone ready? When am I ready? Actually, that's just as important, isn't it? Thank you, Jenny.
So I knew that I was ready, I think, because I just started to there were lots of moments in my life where I kind of wished that there was someone special there to share it with.
Yes.
And this didn't come as an overnight epiphany. It was a very gradual thing. I think it was partly that all my friends were thinning out, moving out of London. So there was less people to spend my time with at weekends, less things to do. I was getting just a bit more settled generally in my career, and started new hobbies, which I really liked. Started this new lifestyle of triathlon and sport and kind of. So I guess I was just in this lifestyle that I thought, this is for me, this is kind of something that I've discovered that I want to do forever. So I think once you've decided almost a lifestyle you're in, then you get ready to almost share it with someone. So how can you tell someone else is in that phase?
Well, how did you tell with this guy? Was this the first one that you realised?
Interestingly, I think, you know what, before I met him, I'd already I think it was just a few months before I met him that I'd had my series of epiphanies, which made me think, actually, I do quite want to spend my free time with someone consistent and have a special friendship with someone. And I think that's no coincidence that it was just a matter of months before then I met someone, because I'd been dating like frivolously for about 3-4 years, and I met loads of people which on paper were really great, and I met loads of people that I really got on with, but actually the reason that nothing came out of those was because I wasn't ready.
You weren't in the
I
right
think
place.
if I was ready, maybe I would have formed something with those people. So, but at the same time, I did meet other people when I was in the I want a relationship phase. Then something didn't come out of them because there was no spark. So I think it's a combination of both. You got to want it, but you be ready for it, for a relationship deep down. But you've also got to meet someone who has some compatibility.
I was going to say that keyword compatibility.
Yeah,
is
and that's
again,
where
a big eharmony word.
Yes,
yes,
well,
isn't
this
it?
Is what I totally believe in. I go a bit off subject now, but this is why I think eharmonies. This compatibility testing is like so useful, because funnily enough, a week before I met the guy that I'm with now, I had a date exactly 7 days before I met him that was set up by someone. And then a week later I knew I was going to be meeting the guy I'm with now. And on paper, I actually was more looking forward to meeting the guy I met 7 days before, the one I'm with now.
Right.
Because he had all these things. He was into cycling, which I'm into. He had no children, and I don't really want children. He hadn't been married. I thought, okay, he's going to be fun. He's going to have all this time. And then the guy I did meet on paper, he just looked a bit corporate. He had 3 children. He was into hunting and fishing, and I was like, And then actually, on paper, I might not have met him. It was only because a friend set us up, and then there was a lot more compatibility. So that's why I think you really do have to go between the lines of compatibility. It's not just about a profile and
deep compatibility.
Yeah,
I think.
Yeah.
But that's a great story, actually, isn't it? That's sort of quite a kind of hope for people out there, that of all the people we think we might dismiss because they don't look right on paper, and that you just never know, because as you said, it's about being in the right place and them being in the right place too. and the kind of honesty it sounds like you two had.
Yeah, that's the thing, honesty.
I'm just going to ask people, our viewers out there, if they have any burning questions. It's such a hot topic. I think it touches everyone at some time in their lives. Do you agree with our assessment so far? Join in with the conversation in the comments, and we will be taking more of your questions after this.
I think most people just look at photographs straight away, and I wanted more than that. I wanted someone that I could spend time with and share things with. Hi, I'm Mandy.
I'm Janine.
And we've been together just over 4 years after meeting on eharmony.
I was single for about 5 years before I met Andy. Previous to that, I had been on other sites and it was quite shallow the way they worked. eHarmony was very different. They took more time to sort of get to know what your personality or interests are and only matched you with people that would be compatible with you.
What I liked about eHarmony was it takes you quite a while to sit and go through the process of what you like, what you don't like. When we did actually meet, we found we were really compatible. We just clicked, massively clicked. And it's as though we'd known each other for quite a while, wasn't it? Really, it wasn't.
Definitely, yeah.
It didn't feel like a first date.
No,
even though I was nervous as hell.
He was quite nervous actually, it was quite funny.
We both love travelling, don't we?
Love to travel.
We love cooking.
We love cooking together.
We both wanted children, we didn't have any children. We have a little girl now, which is great.
Massive thank you for letting me find you're my soulmate, aren't you?
Yeah,
really. So yeah, I don't think I would have found him any other way.
Wouldn't have met without the website, and we thank eHarmony for that, definitely.
Definitely.
Oh, that's such a gorgeous story, and what a beautiful little girl. You're watching Love Decoded, brought to you by eHarmony. I'm Jacqui Marson, and today I'm joined by author and journalist Helen Croydon, and we're talking about commitment-phobia, and when is someone yourself, and the other half, when are they ready for a relationship? How can you tell? So join in with the conversation, ask us your questions, tell us your stories in the comments section now. Thank you. And we have another question here from Sophie. Sophie asks, I think I'm dating a commitment-phobe. Will I be able to change him? That, Sophie, is a fantastic question. I'm really, really glad you asked that because so many people, so many of my clients in the past, that's a real kind of brain teaser. Is he a commitment-phobe? How can I tell? Can I change him? So, Helen, can we ever change anyone?
I think the answer is no, she can't change him, but he can change.
Exactly, very well put, I think.
So you cannot force someone to want a relationship, and we shouldn't. But I think ultimately we are, as someone who was a vehement commitment phobe myself and thought, no, I never want that full-time thing where I have to share my whole life with someone. I think now that we are ultimately, as humans, we are pair bonding and we do crave that intimacy, and I think most people, unless you've got something, a serious screw loose, most people are very compassionate, emotional beings and want to share things, but that comes, you know what I mean, that you've got to want it, and that is something that will develop, and you can't make someone develop that.
You are living proof of how someone changed, because you just used the word never, which is such a kind of black and white word that you used to say, I never want that. And look how, and you said you were just going back over your first memoir because it's coming out as an audio book, and you can't believe really how you were and how stuck you were in that phase. So I'd say to Sophie, this guy that you're with, people do change. Of course they change, Sophie. But we can't make. They are where they are at this moment in their journey.
And I would say to Sophie, you've either got to stay with him through the journey and take a step back, and let him do what he needs to do, but at the same time live your own life and don't be too needy. But this is kind of what I did with the guy I'm with now, because he was slightly commitment phobic when I met him, because he's fresh from a marriage separation. But don't kind of hang your hopes on that and continue seeing lots of your friends and keep up your life. Very much so, very much so. And then also be open to the fact that he might not change. He might not change while he's with her, but she can do that. But do not crowd him. Or she could walk, if she really is, depending what's
what
where
stage
Sophie
she's
is.
at, yeah.
Yeah, if
Yeah.
she really is in that I
Yeah.
want to settle down, then I would say walk away, because you can't actively change. And maybe, who knows, in 5 years' time he might come knocking
Yes,
on her door
yes,
again, who knows. But
yeah.
whatever it is, she's got to be very, very strong there and take one of those options. But the thing not to do is hang on and try and change him.
Yeah, no, I don't think we can ever try and change another human being. But also I'm remembering quite a few years back that fantastic book by the only male Sex and the City scriptwriter called He's Just Not That Into You. And he said that every Monday morning he would come into the script meetings in Sex and the City with this bunch of women, and they'd all be making excuses for men they'd dated and said, like, oh, well, you know, I think he's been hurt, I think he's very sensitive because he hadn't replied to them or he hadn't treated them as they wanted to be treated at that point. So he was so kind of outraged at what he thought was their naivety, and that he wrote this book. He's Just Not That Into You.
It's a great book.
It is a great book.
I've
It
read
really
it,
is.
yeah.
It's very compassionate. It's very kind of loving and supportive of women. And it basically says, like, again, we're being a bit gender, but if someone, male or female, if they are into you, if they like you enough, if there's that connection, it will work. So this kind of like, oh, I want to change him, I want him to come to these things more, message him more. No, it's probably not that is not the right person for you at this right time, and to kind of move on. And like you say, look after yourself and what you want to do.
Yeah.
Okay, we've got our first question from Man. We always like that because we can be a bit kind of gendered here, I think. Mark asks, I'd like to settle down, but I'm scared of committing to someone in case it all goes wrong. How can I overcome my fear? Again, thank you very much for that, Mark, because that brings us that whole area that I was mentioning earlier about, you know, when it's not life stage. Now, Mark is clearly in the life stage now that he does want to settle down, and where the phobic bit comes from this, it's a fear. You have and you feel it deep in your body when someone comes too close, and that fear of like, am I going to get hurt, basically.
And that's a really brave question from
brave
Mark.
question,
and actually, I think with him actually asking that question, how can I overcome it? I think he's already done the first stage, and that he's obviously ready to overcome it. He's recognised, you know,
good point.
It's like any kind of addiction, isn't it? The first stage is you recognise you've got a problem, and he's obviously recognising that something is holding him back. So firstly, it's brilliant. I think he's already one step there.
With his awareness and insight,
And the other thing I'd say to that is, Mark is not alone. I mean, that question is sounds like he's really feeling like quite alone in his fear, and perhaps, I don't know, he's thinking, oh gosh, why am I so scared of settling down and no one else is? Actually, this is something that we all ask, right? Relationships are scary, even if you're not a commitment phobe, even if you are ready for a relationship. We all run the risk of getting hurt. But unless you run that risk, you're never going to find anyone. So that's the thing. He's just got to think, this is not his problem. This is a problem we all have. I'm still scared of getting hurt.
And I am too. And even though I've been in a relationship for 26 years this year, it's the constant thing. That's such a good point you made, Helen. I think we should talk just a tiny bit more about this. Or I could talk about, if I was working with a client, or even myself or you, I would say, you know, bring it down to kind of tiny steps, that every time you're triggered in that fear, that you kind of go into your body and you kind of think, where is the fear? And you recognise it and think, I am scared that, you know, and it might tie to a trigger that they didn't reply to something, or you suddenly got insecure or jealous that they're spending time with their mates or their family, or they're doing something else without you. And then again, I would say dare to communicate it. If your relationship is going to work, you have got to dare to speak that kind of painless dread and ask for what you need. So you might say, like, oh, when you went off on that hen party with your mates, I felt, you know, a bit unloved and I felt fearful. So can we spend an evening together? And I need a hug. I need some reassurance. Now that is almost the scariest thing in the world, don't you think, really, from your own relationship?
But that makes a relationship more real as well.
Totally
and because we're all vulnerable. We all have the same fears and everything. So absolutely, you've got to talk about that, and it's but not in a crowded way, not in a like, if you go on a hen do or a stag do, I want you to phone me every 10 minutes. No, not like that. But just, okay, this made me feel a bit like this, and can you not do that again, please? Or, you know, in a very nice and in a very rational way. And I think most people, if they're rational themselves, will respect that. And, you know, I think never approach something in an accusational way of you never called or you never did this. It's more like, You know what? I felt a bit like this when you did that, and I think that's how you end up having a much more calmer,
safe,
honest relationship. So that's what I have in my relationship now, which I didn't have in other ones. You know, it's like you know, and also it's. So I'm going to say something else on that fear factor. Oh, so that's what I was going to say to Mark as well. Is if he is scared of getting hurt in a relationship, is just don't give up everything else in your life. Yes. And I say that to everyone in a relationship, even if you're getting married. Actually, you've got to keep a sense of self as well, and you've got to keep things.
Don't put all your eggs in one basket. But also, Mark, I would sort of say, like we were saying, really feel the fear and do it anyway. Go through that fear barrier and just kind of really check in with yourself and communicate with your partner. That will be the way forward. And like Helen says, it might work, it might not, but we have to risk to love in this world. Another question here from Vita, who asks, should I commit to my partner if our long-term dreams are different? Is it okay to compromise? That's interesting, Vita, thank you. Our long-term dreams are different. Oh, I'd love to know more. We need to get her in the studio.
More. Yeah, we need
What are your dreams? What are his dreams? What?
Yeah,
okay.
Well, if you're, it depends whether those dreams are going to stop you living your own dream, I suppose, doesn't it? It depends whether that dream is it a dream of where you're going to live? Is it a dream of...
That's right.
It's...
like if I'm thinking something, you know, he likes motocross and you don't, you want a car, I'm sure there's a compromise there. If it's about hobbies, if it's about friends, if it's about so many things, a compromise would be possible. But if it's about something like, do we have children, that's massive.
That's big.
That's potentially a deal breaker, because if your dream is to have a child or children, and his absolutely isn't, I'm not sure how you might compromise on that one.
I would,
and there are maybe some others in that arena. Oh, that, you know, maybe one of you wanted an open relationship and the other didn't. These are massive things of values.
I think the question is are your dream, whatever those dreams are that... what's the viewer's last name?
It was Vita.
Vita. Sorry, Vita. Whatever your views, your dreams are, I think if one is going to stop the other achieving those dreams, then that's something you've got to really, really consider.
And I would say, Vita, I don't want to kind of keep saying that everyone should go to relationship counselling, because I rarely say that, really. I think a lot of things can be worked out between you. But it depending, again, what these dreams are, I think a couple of sessions of almost like just someone who you go there who's going to mediate between you, there may be a compromise solution. And often we kind of keep it in sort of silence and isolation, a bit shame, and we don't speak our truth, and then it just gets worse and worse and worse, the fear that there's not a way forward for that relationship. But I think possibly with that one, seek some help. Okay, at the start, I think the last question we've got time for today. Tony asks, I've just come out of a long-term relationship and I'm trying to revive my old friendships. Do you have any advice on how to start building on those relationships back up? Okay, that's an interesting one.
Good
to come out of a long-term relationship, often we get quite insular, don't we, with our partner.
Yeah.
But you've been saying all along, you've said a lot today, don't give up your hobbies, don't give up your friends, don't give up your sense of self. This person maybe did, or Tony or a friend of his did, and it's like, how do you then...
Yeah, good. Well, I think what's brilliant, brilliant about what he says is he does want to build those friendships back up instead of just wanting to jump into another relationship to fill the void, which I think a lot of people would be tempted to do. And that's certainly when I came out of my last relationship a few years ago, I think that's what I did immediately. It was like, oh, I'm so used to spending my weekends with someone that the easiest thing is to kind of find another template to fill it. And I went through a very brief stage of kind of just wanting someone like immediately, and then I soon got over that, don't worry.
No, but very common kind of reaction.
It is very common, but I think as someone who's always quite liked being single, for me that was quite easy to overcome. But anyway, I would say, so first of all, he's approaching this in totally the right way and wanting to build those friendships back up rather than wanting to fill the role. But just approach those friends and say, look, I've not been on the scene for a while. I'm sorry, I've neglected you.
Yes.
Let's go for a drink. It's been too long. I think most people are quite understanding. Most friends, anyway, are understanding that people come and go. And who knows? Maybe those friends who he wants to touch base with are going through their own little crises and are feeling like they want to touch base with old friends again. I do think what's quite common, I hear this again and again from people, is as people get older, I think it's harder to touch base with friends. And I think there are a lot of people in approaching, like my age, you know, approaching middle age, late 30s, early 40s, who find it's harder to make friends at that age because people do get more responsible. That's the age when everyone's got young children. So he might surprise himself and find that those friends are actually really open to old friends getting back in touch and saying, hey, we've lost touch.
I think that's exactly what I would say. It's kind of like, as you said, the sort of mea culpa of making a kind of honest apology and say, I'm so sorry, really, I kind of, you know, put you guys on the back burner for the last 5, 10, 20 years, however many. But I think people are amazingly and surprisingly open, not every single person, but to that reaching out if you're honest and say, like, you know, I'm in this position now. And like you say, chances are at least one of them will be too. And something sort of surprisingly, you know, good and amazing and joyous and reconnecting will probably come out of those moves you make. So I think the key is, though, honesty. And apology, actually. I'm always one for a good apology, a good heartfelt apology.
I'm sorry I haven't kept in touch. And then also when you do get in touch, I think to deepen those friendships, it's really good to do things together rather than just say, let's go for a beer or which I think I used to be guilty about this. This is one of the things I talk about in one of my books, is I used to kind of just see all friends as like entertainment. Let's go for a drink. Let's go for a night out. Whereas actually, I think how you build up strength of friendships is by doing things, doing more normal things. Hey, let's just go for a walk. Go for a walk.
Go to a gallery.
Bike ride. Go meet for just doing normal everyday things together.
I agree. Helen, that is a great point to end on. I mean, I think actually what you've just said, you would apply to dating and to one's sense of self, that don't get hung up on, is this the one? Is he a commitment-phobe? Am I a commitment-phobe? Let's actually try and park that label today. Both of us aren't that keen on
and
labeling.
Understand that we all have to go through motions, and we can't ever expect someone to commit straight away because it's scary. We've all got a lot to lose, so we can only expect people to go slowly.
We're all human in our fears, and we're all human in, at times, being in the phase where we want freedom and fun and irresponsibility, maybe. So thank you very, very much for being our guest today. You've been fantastic. That was our last question. That's all we have time for. If we didn't get to your question this week, don't worry. We'll be back live at the usual time, which will be Tuesday, 12:30 next Tuesday. This was a one-off being Monday. I hope you managed to find us. So please start sending your questions and comments now via Facebook or Twitter, which is at eharmony UK, and tune in next week. See you then. Bye-bye.